I'll never forget the way the windows rattled that morning. The whole house shaking as a police cruiser rolled up and stopped right in front of my gate. You ever have one of those moments where you can just feel in your gut that life is about to go sideways? Yeah, that was me, standing there in my pajamas, clutching a mug of cold coffee, staring at the HOA president herself, Linda, arms crossed, lips curled in this smug little grin, like she'd already counted her victory. She pointed right at me and told the officers I was trespassing on my own land. My own land, if you can believe that. Now, I wish I could tell you I just stood tall, unshakable, but I'd be lying. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking, because this wasn't some backyard spat. This was war. Not about overgrown grass or paint colors. This was about power, about control, about one woman deciding she'd make me her personal project, and I was about to show her she'd picked the wrong guy. Let me back up a sec. See, I'd inherited this lakeside ranch from my grandfather, a quiet spot, the kind of place where the air actually smells clean, and at night you can hear the water lapping the dock. Nothing but crickets and old pine. After grinding away at my own business for years, I thought, finally, a place to breathe. You know? But peace is a fragile thing. One morning it's yours. The next, Linda's at your door, clipboard in hand, looking like a politician running for class president, rehearsed smile and all. She's leaning in, talking about exclusive amenities, community spirit, neighborly perk stuff that sounds good until you realize all she really wants is your signature and your silence. The privilege of being part of our association, she said, and the way she drew out privilege nearly made me laugh. My family had worked this land before Linda's precious board was even a twinkle in the developer's eye. I just looked her right in the eye and said, "No thanks. I like things just the way they are." For a second, her smile twitched just a little, but she kept that step-forward wife thing going and let loose a warning that sounded sweet as syrup. Some people have trouble following the rules, but refusing to join, well, that'll cause issues, and I don't think you want that. Yeah, that happened. So I shut the door, but even as I listened to her heels clicking down my front steps, I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, a week later, a letter landed in my mailbox, stamped official, stuffed with legalese. Failure to maintain property lines, unauthorized structures, noncompliance with HOA membership, all written to sound like a federal offense. At first, I laughed, but the knot in my stomach said otherwise. Linda wanted to see how much I'd take before I broke. Lucky for me, I've got a buddy named Roberta, lawyer, who actually enjoys property law, if you can believe it. I called him up, and he just chuckled. "They're bluffing. Let's file a formal complaint. Make them show us what they've really got." For a moment, I felt solid until 2 days later when another envelope showed up, this time threatening foreclosure, accusing me of disrupting the community over an old barn and the lakeside cabin I just finished renovating, permits and all. I was ready to storm the HOA office, but then I remembered something my grandfather said. This land is ironclad. Nobody touches it unless you let them. I started digging through his old files and, sure enough, found deed clauses protecting every inch from outside claims. Linda had just walked into a legal minefield, and she didn't even know it. The next morning, I marched down to the county records office, made fresh copies of everything, and dropped a letter with the HOA short, sharp, devastating, plus my lawyer's card if they wanted to argue. But I didn't stop there. I mailed copies to every homeowner in Silver Creek, because if Linda wanted a power play, I'd show her the strength of a little daylight. That's when she brought the cops. Late at night, cruiser lights spinning, she stood there smirking, arms folded, practically salivating at the thought of seeing me in cuffs. "He's refusing to comply with the HOA rules," she told them, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to peek through their curtains. My blood boiled, but I just handed over the deeds. The officers looked them over, their faces going from bored to awkward. Finally, one turned to Linda, deadpan. "Ma'am, this isn't your jurisdiction." You should have seen her face. Red as a tomato, lips pressed thin, not a word left. You'd think that'd be the end of it. But if you've ever dealt with someone who can't lose, you know better. A week later, another letter, a new threat, this time from a corporate lawyer, demanding $500,000 for damages to the community. I sat at my kitchen table that night, staring at the number, feeling like maybe I'd made a huge mistake. I thought about selling the land, walking away, just letting her win. I mean, who was I to fight the whole board, their money, their lawyers? For a split second, I believed maybe I really was the problem. But I stepped out onto my porch, looking out at that quiet lake, and I heard my grandfather in my head, "Don't let him scare you off." And just then, one by one, neighbors started coming by first just to say hi. But then they started whispering stories about Linda's threats, her fake fines, the way she'd bullied them into silence. For the first time, I realized it wasn't just about me. I wasn't alone, and neither were they. Suddenly, this fight was bigger than a property line. It was about the whole community. So when the HOA called a meeting to confront me, I walked in with Robert and a stack of documents thicker than a Bible. The room was packed, neighbors pressed shoulder to shoulder, some glaring, some hopeful. Linda sat at the head, looking calm, but her eyes were darting, hands fidgeting under the table. I laid out every document: permits, deeds, emails. "You've been harassing me, violating your own bylaws. And now I'm filing a countersuit for harassment." The air went heavy. Even her board members looked like they wanted to be anywhere but that room. But Linda, she wasn't finished. She filed a restraining order, claimed I'd threatened her, tried to flip the whole story. When Robert read the paperwork to me, I felt sick. What if the court believed her? But Robert just grinned. "They're desperate. We'll bury them with evidence." And he meant it. The day of the community forum, Linda stood up, voice shaking but loud, trying to turn everyone against me. I got up, looked at every face in the room and said, "This isn't about me. It's about all of yous, about whether we let one person bully an entire neighborhood or we take our power back." For a moment, dead silence. Then whispers, then nods. I saw it in their eyes. Linda's grip was slipping. She had one last trick, though. She contested my grandfather's will, tried to claim I wasn't the rightful heir. That was a gut punch. She wasn't just after my land. She was after my family's whole legacy. Court day felt like walking into a firing squad. She sat across from me, trembling, but her lawyer was still clinging to any loophole he could find. Then Robert dropped every record: original will, signatures, witness statements, airtight as a bank vault. The judge didn't even blink, just slammed the gavel. "The will stands. The HOA has no claim. Case dismissed." I glanced at Linda as those words echoed. Her face had drained of all color, mouth half open, eyes blank. No more threats, no more smugness, just the shock of someone watching their little empire crumble. I didn't gloat, didn't throw a party. I just stepped outside, let the sun hit my face, and finally breathed. Months of tension gone, just like that. The reign of Silver Creek's queen was over. She dragged the police to my gate, tried to bankrupt me, even clawed at my family's inheritance, and in the end, lost it all in front of everyone she tried to control. And me? I kept my land, my dignity, and the deep satisfaction of knowing that power built on fear never lasts. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the real lesson: never let a bully rewrite the rules of your life, no matter what title they hide behind. Stand your ground, because in the end, the truth will always outlast their lies. Now, some folks still whisper Linda's name like she's a ghost lurking in the neighborhood, waiting for a comeback. Maybe she'll try, maybe she won't. But ask yourself, if it happened to you, would you fight or would you fold? Drop your thoughts below. Was I right to stand up, or should I have just walked away? Let's see where you land on this one, because in places like Silver Creek, the battle for what's right never really ends.